The Sentinel. What is hope? The emotion or feeling that things will get better? That the stressful experiences that one is going through will pass and the future will be better than the present? Hope is one of the earlier human inventions, something that has driven us past those long, cold nights. Those nights when food is scarce. The nights when your shelter isn't enough to stop the scratching at the door. Yes, and also nights that you dream of sunrise, even if you know that you're likely not going to see another one. Hope is that insidious feeling that worms through your every thought and every need. And with it, humanity as a whole has not died with a whimper. Hope is one of the strongest weapons a human can summon, even if it's something you can't hold, quantify, or even see. It's a paradoxical feeling. How can such a thing be strong and weak at the same time? Be paper thin, but shield us from the fiercest wounds? What is it about hope that both brings us up and destroys us in the same mode? Finally, how is hope such a good thing when it's almost always surrounded by evil? And like most things in the anomalous world that we live in, hope is something that can manifest as a sentient being. The Sentinel is the topic of today's report, a creature or being that came to the agency's awareness only in the last 40 years. The Sentinel is a creature that belongs in the rare classification of creature, a conceptual manifestation. Similar to the agency's blind judge that represents truth and the wicked demon of greed and gluttony that is the Black Crown, the Sentinel is the hopes of mankind manifested into the tangible. So it's particularly ironic that the creature that represents surviving, thriving for a better future, of living, resembles the Grim Reaper. A long, dark cloak that keeps its body in shadows, uneven horns that don't reflect light, and a scythe that changes length whenever one blinks. The Sentinel looks to match the various depictions of death. There is a reason for that, because where the Sentinel is, death usually follows. Because while not as malicious as the Black Crown, the Sentinel isn't a force for good like the blind judge. This conceptual manifestation, despite representing hope, is a neutral creature. The Sentinel is an observer. When it manifests, it doesn't aid or hinder its target of observation, nor is it fully manifested into this realm, so there's no real means of physically interacting with it aside from one: its scythe. A swing of its scythe will have one of two effects. When struck, a person will bolster their hopes or have all their hopes extinguished. That final spark, the ember of humanity that has created kings and destroyed empires. The Sentinel can fan the flame into a blaze or snuff it out. And once snuffed out, that ember can never be relit. That person who was affected by the Sentinel will never hope again. And with that missing hope, there will be no motivation for them to do anything but sink deeper into despair. They wither, and while they are still alive, that person basically begins to rot. That not only did their minds begin to go, so did their bodies. The only thing that can be done is to put them on life support and wait for their bodies to just stop, with no cause to undo the damage. In the early days of the victim's condition, when they could still answer questions or have the will to answer, they mentioned the Sentinel speaking to them in their heads, asking them if they indeed had given up. They claimed that the Sentinel didn't wait for an answer, but told them that it saw and it understands, and then it felt like something inside of them was crushed. The person interviewed eventually took their life in the next month, leaving a note that just said, "I can't." But the Sentinel doesn't just extinguish, it also fuels. Another person, the first encounter with the Sentinel was actually with one of ours, an agency agent. At the time, Agent Newman, the fifth agent to hold that rank, was on assignment investigating the disappearance of a peaceful preternatural creature. That was when him and his team encountered a worst-case scenario: Siren Head. And to make it more dangerous, one that was able to transform itself into living electricity. With a call that sounds like a breaker box blowing, the Siren Head was one that delighted in slowly electrocuting its victims. It had found the creature Newman was assigned to look for, actually being the cause of its disappearance. This one liked to ambush its prey with a massive surge that tends to partially paralyze them, keeping them from moving at full speed and delaying their reactions. At that point, Newman and the team were in real trouble, and even stumbling and in pain with the siren head slowly pacing after them, making sounds that synthesized laughter with its static, sounding like siren calls. One by one, Newman was forced to watch Siren Head pick off his teammates, taking its time as it enjoyed the misery it caused to the survivors. Help wasn't coming because the creature attacking them had been able to jam the communication devices long ago. Soon, Newman was the last one. The rest of his team had been slaughtered, and as Newman retreated, he could tell he was going deeper and deeper into danger. The lights from the city had long been consumed by the darkness of the forest he was running in. Agent Newman eventually found himself in a clearing, one that had the trees ripped up, and all around were bodies. Endless amount of bodies, including the corpse of the creature Newman was tasked to find. He had been guided straight to the Siren Head's nest, the place where it sleeps and feeds. In the distance, the sound of static was getting louder and louder. This was it. Newman was about to consider getting his gun out and ending it. But before he could reach his holster, it appeared, the Sentinel. Its sudden appearance startled the panicked agent, and his training took over. Instead of drawing the gun to take his life, he drew it and pointed it at the apparition. They locked eyes, and according to Newman when later interviewed, the creature spoke to him. "Is this it for you, Jacob?" Using Newman's name, one that he hadn't heard in years since joining the agency. It was one of the things he chose to give up on, as he had no friends or family outside his fellow agents. When the creature spoke, it wasn't English. It wasn't any language that Newman could recognize, but he understood it nonetheless. "Is this all you can do?" the creature continued, uncaring of the increasing sound of static. Something inside Newman flared up in response to the creature's question. Newman was about to speak, but the creature spoke first. "So, I see you aren't done yet." The creature drew its weapon, causing Newman to rest his finger on the trigger, his sights between the creature's empty sockets. It didn't do any good, because with a blur of speed, Newman found the scythe embedded in his chest. "Go and show me, Jacob," it said as it pulled out the scythe with a liquid-like sound. Looking down, Newman saw that he wasn't wounded, but he felt something, and something in him instinctively knew in that moment. This wasn't his end. He wasn't going to die today. Even as the static got closer and closer, mocking inhuman laughter echoing in the woods, Newman worked. He still had his field kit, and that kit was going to save his life. Tripwires tied to grenades in the shadow of the fallen trees, flares to brighten the pitch-dark forest, and he could see in the distance the silhouette of the creature. It was slowly heading towards him. It took but a moment for Newman to toss the flash grenade as hard as he could in the direction of his chaser. A glance showed that the Sentinel was gone, but that wasn't his worry. His worry was about the scratching of something in agony as his lucky toss landed his flashbang right in the siren of the yellow-skinned Siren Head that had killed his team. The creature screeched in agony and didn't see the tripwires until it tripped over them, dropping it to the ground and just on the right spot to land on the grenades, the ones that its actions had primed. With a bloodthirsty grin, Newman went on the attack, armed with his service pistol, a knife, and a lot more explosives than expected in an agent's kit. Newman was seriously injured, having lost 3 fingers on his non-dominant hand as he shoved his last grenade in the wounded torso of the yellow Siren Head. The creature had picked him up and tossed him hard enough that he lost his fingers from scraping against some rocks. That didn't save the Siren Head from the explosion in its chest. Its long arms, too awkward to actually reach its own chest to extract the prime grenade. Newman was found the next day by rescue ops. When his team failed to check in, they used the trackers all agents had installed to locate him. They found him straddling the dead Siren Head's body, laughing like a maniac, stabbing the body as many times as his tired arms could. He was the only one in the clearing. And this was one of the first recorded incidents where a Siren Head was killed in action by a human. This is why conceptual creatures are considered to be highly dangerous, on our side or not. Because who would have thought a little hope could do this?